Coming home from work that evening felt like stepping into a painting made of winter. Snow blanketed the fields around the cottage in Eastmoor, softening the world into quiet drifts of white. The porch light glowed faintly through the falling flakes, warm and familiar. My boots crunched on the frozen steps, and as I reached for the door, I remember thinking how good it would feel to sink into the warmth of home and see my family gathered inside. But the moment the door clicked shut behind me, the air felt wrong. Not silent, held, like the house itself was holding its breath. Coats hung neatly on their hooks. The fire crackled in the living room. Everything looked normal, but a strange heaviness pressed down on me. I stepped into the kitchen and stopped. A man I had never seen before stood beside the table, gripping an axe from our own shed. The blade was nicked and speckled with dirt. The handle looked almost too small in his hand. My parents sat stiffly across from him, faces pale, eyes darting to mine in terrified warning. And our daughter sat at the end of the table, legs trembling, her 10-year-old fingers clamped around the arms of her chair. The man turned, his expression unnervingly calm. "Evenin'," he said. His voice had that flat, almost conversational tone that made my stomach twist. "Name's Billy. Broke out of prison today. Need a place to stay. Do exactly what I say, and nobody gets hurt." I could hardly breathe, but I nodded, anything to keep my daughter safe. "Okay," I managed. "We won't cause trouble." He made us sit in tense silence, listening to the wind groan outside until my husband came home an hour later. The moment he stepped inside, Billy lunged, grabbing me by the arm and yanking me upright. A knife flashed from his pocket, the cold edge pressed to my throat. "Tie them up," he ordered, shoving cords at my husband. "All of them. Tight." My husband's hands shook as he obeyed. He tried to whisper reassurance, his voice cracking. "It'll be okay. Just stay calm." That night, we were dragged into separate rooms. Each one felt like a dark box, walls closing in. I heard shouts from my father's room, sharp impacts, then a choked cry. My mother sobbed somewhere behind a closed door. Sarah's voice, small and terrified, echoed down the hall until Billy shouted at her to shut up. I begged through the wood grain of my door, "Please, please stop!" But all I heard was his low, humorless laugh. The next morning brought no relief. Workers came unexpectedly to check the septic tank. Billy stood behind me with the knife pressed into my back, lips brushing my ear as he hissed. "Smile. Send them away. Make one wrong move and your little girl dies first." My hands shook visibly, but the workers never noticed. They left with a friendly wave, unaware of how close they'd been to 5 terrified hostages. Later, he pushed a list into my hands. Newspapers. Cigarettes. Matches. "Drive into town. Don't talk to a soul beyond buying these. I'll know if you try something. I still have your family." As I drove away, the radio crackled with weather warnings. Roads icing, snow thickening. Every instinct inside me screamed to run to the police, to throw myself into someone's arms, to beg for help. But every time I imagined opening my mouth, I saw Sarah's frightened little face. So I bought what he asked for and drove back, heart in my throat the entire way. When I returned, he acted almost cheerful, restless, pacing, manic. He made us sit at the table and play cards as if we were guests at some bizarre dinner party. The fire popped loudly in the silence. My mother's eyes were red from crying. My husband stared at the wall instead of his cards. "Where's Sarah?" I finally asked, voice trembling. "Sleeping," he said, dealing another hand. "Kids sleep a lot." But the flicker in his eyes, it wasn't right. By the third day, a storm had sealed the cottage under heavy snow. Billy stalked from window to window, muttering about money, about needing a car, about being trapped. His hands shook now, not from fear but agitation. The air felt electrically charged, danger coiling tighter every hour. That afternoon, he shoved us toward the door. "You two, come with me. We need supplies." He pointed at my husband and me. "The rest stay. No funny business." At a stoplight in town, my husband whispered, "We should tell the cop. He's right there." I saw the officer parked across the street, saw safety just steps away. But all I could picture was Sarah's face. I shook my head. "He'll kill them. We can't." When we returned, Billy retied my husband and dragged me back outside. "We're leaving," he said, fumbling with the keys. Snow hammered the windshield, but halfway down the road he suddenly turned back. "No," he muttered. "No loose ends." As we pulled into the driveway, I heard the first scream, my mother's, high and desperate. Then my husband's voice, shouting, struggling, begging. The back door slammed, a crash, then silence. I screamed from inside the car, pounding on the windows, but he kept them locked. Neighbors heard the chaos and ran toward the house, calling the police as they arrived at the porch. By the time officers entered, my father and daughter had already been murdered, killed the very first night, something he had kept hidden behind his calm voice and forced smiles. My mother and husband died trying to fight him off in those last moments. Billy fled with me in the car, crashing into a ditch a mile down the icy road, then stealing another vehicle. Sirens echoed through the snowstorm as he drove recklessly, dragging me with him in a last frantic attempt to escape. The final confrontation happened in a blinding flurry of lights and snowfall. Police boxed us in near the edge of the woods. He grabbed the axe from the back seat, dragging me out with it pressed against my neck. "Your time's up," he shouted. Raising it high, a single officer lunged in, gunshots cracking through the icy air. Billy dropped. The axe slipped from his hands. He fell into the snow, and everything finally went still. I survived. My family did not. Now the cottage stands quiet and hollow, wrapped in winter year-round in my memory. So when summer rolled around, my friend Dave and I figured it was the perfect time to vanish into the Utah mountains for a while. We found this old cabin listed online, one of those places that barely shows up on a map, tucked miles down dirt roads that twist through pines and open meadows. The listing promised absolute solitude, which sounded perfect. No traffic, no phones buzzing, no responsibilities knocking at the door. The drive took most of the day. By the time we turned off the last paved road, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in dusty orange streaks. We bounced along rough tracks, our truck rattling as we climbed higher into the mountains. When the cabin finally came into view, it looked exactly like the photos. Hand-built wooden walls weathered gray by sun and rain, a tiny porch, a stone chimney rising crookedly on one side. It looked lonely in a way that felt peaceful, until that first moment I stepped up onto the porch. The key was under the mat, just like the owner said. But when I pushed the door open, something in my gut tightened. The latch didn't catch properly, like it hadn't been closed all the way. The faint smell of cold air and old smoke drifted out. I paused in the doorway. "Hey, Dave, you think animals got in?" I asked. He hauled his duffel inside and shrugged. "Probably just the wind. These places shift all the time." But even he sounded unsure. We walked through the tiny place, 2 small bedrooms with creaky metal bunks, a kitchen with dated appliances, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. Everything looked normal until I opened a cupboard looking for a pot. A few cans of food sat behind the plates, ones we definitely didn't bring. One of them was half-eaten, a jagged metal edge where someone had pried it open. "Weird," I murmured. Dave leaned over my shoulder. "Last renters probably forgot it." He tried to brush it off. "Come on, man. I'm starving. Let's just eat something real." We threw together some sandwiches and ate quickly, then grabbed our gear and walked down to the stream to fish before the light disappeared. The water was clear and icy, rushing over smooth stones. We caught a couple trout, joked around, pretended nothing felt strange. But by evening, when we returned and built a fire inside the cabin, the woods around us were unnervingly still. We played cards at the little table, laughing at first. But every so often, my ears would tune into the silence outside, too quiet, like the forest was holding its breath. When we finally turned in, I lay awake longer than I cared to admit, listening to every creak of the floors, every gust of wind pressing against the walls. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember was waking abruptly to a faint thump outside, a single, heavy step. I held my breath. There it was again, a slow, deliberate crunch of dirt. "Dave?" I whispered. "Yeah?" His voice sounded groggy. "You hear that?" He paused. "Probably a deer. Go back to sleep." But it didn't feel like a deer. It felt like a person. Close, morning came with gray light filtering through the curtains and the smell of strong coffee. Dave cooked eggs while I stepped out onto the porch to clear my head. That's when I saw it. A boot print in the soft dirt, deep, crisp, unmistakably fresh. bigger than either of ours. It pointed right toward the porch. A cold shiver crawled up my back. "Dave, get over here." He joined me, crouched down, studied it. His jaw tightened. Maybe the owner stopped by? Without a truck? Or saying anything? We didn't find anything else around the cabin, but the unease stuck. We hiked the trail behind the cabin to try to reset our minds. About a mile in, we found a clearing hidden behind thick brush. There was trash scattered in a small, makeshift nest, food wrappers, scraps of clothing, a rusty can opener. Some of the wrappers matched the brand of the half-empty can in our cupboard. "Dave, someone's living out here," I said. He kicked lightly at the mess. "Looks fresh. Poacher, drifter, whoever it is, I don't want to run into them." The woods didn't feel peaceful anymore. The trees felt tighter, the shadows heavier. We fished again that afternoon, but my eyes kept drifting toward the tree line, waiting for movement. By dinner, we'd grilled trout over a small fire pit, trying to keep things normal. Dave cracked a joke. Maybe Bigfoot left that footprint, but even he didn't smile after it left his mouth. We locked the door that night, even though the latch barely held. The fire crackled softly as darkness swallowed the windows. The quiet pressed in, thicker than before. Then, just after 10, something scraped along the wooden wall outside, a slow drag, like fingertips. I froze. Dave looked up sharply. A shadow crossed the window, tall, human-shaped, gone as fast as it appeared. "Dave," I whispered, standing. "There's someone out there." "Flashlight," he said, voice tight. I grabbed it, hands shaking, and shined it through the glass. Only trees stared back. We killed the lights inside so we could see better. The night outside was endless and pitch black. Then a whistle broke the silence. Low, deliberate. Not an animal. "Who the hell is that?" Dave muttered. Footsteps circled the cabin. Slow, testing, crunching the leaves. They stopped by the back door. The handle jiggled, metal tapping metal. My heart slammed into my ribs. I shouted, pounding the wall. "We see you! Get out of here!" Everything went dead quiet. Then footsteps retreating, fading into the woods. "We're leaving at first light," Dave said, pale. "I don't care if we lose the deposit." Sleep wasn't an option. I sat in the chair facing the door, a kitchen knife balanced across my lap, listening to the fire burn low. Around 3 in the morning, a new sound started, scratching. Not outside. Beneath us, the crawl space. Something bigger than an animal shifting around underneath the cabin. "We stomp," he whispered. We both slammed our heels into the wooden boards. The noise stopped instantly. We didn't hear anything else, but the knowledge was worse. Whoever had been out there knew the cabin, knew the crawl space, knew the layout, and he hadn't left for good. At first light, we threw our gear in the truck without talking. I felt eyes on us the entire time. Before I got into the passenger seat, a flicker of movement in the trees caught my eye. A glint, faint but unmistakable, binoculars. "Dave, go. Now." He hit the gas and we tore down the dirt road, dust spraying behind us. A few miles later, we came across a sheriff's truck heading up the same road. We waved him down and told him everything. Footprints, noises, trash, someone trying the door. The sheriff didn't look surprised. "You boys staying in the Iron County rentals?" he asked. We nodded. He sighed. "We've been tracking a guy out here for years. Calls himself a mountain man. Breaks into cabins, steals food, watches people. He's dangerous, armed most times. You're lucky he didn't push his way inside." We drove away shaking, the air finally feeling safe again now that civilization was in sight. Later that week, I read about him, Troy James Knapp, a survivalist ghost in the Utah mountains, wanted for burglaries, property damage, and armed confrontations. They caught him not long after our trip during a snow-covered standoff. But knowing he'd been out there that night, circling our cabin, testing the doors, crawling underneath the floor, still puts ice in my veins. We weren't alone. Not even close. And if we'd stayed one more night, I'm not sure we would have left at all. I woke to a loud bang that shook the entire house. It was late, too late, and I was only 13, still half asleep, tangled in my blankets. Molly, my dog, barked like a maniac from downstairs, her growls echoing through the dark hallways. My chest tightened as I listened. Then came more noises, a voice shouting outside, rough and angry, cutting through the night. My dad went to the door, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting a thin line through the darkness. "Show me your badge," he called, steady but tense. Silence answered him. Another bang followed, louder this time, rattling the windows and sending dust motes dancing in the flashlight's glow. Fear pinched at me, and I scrambled out of bed, feet cold on the floor, and ran to my parents' room. My mom was already awake, her eyes wide and frantic. "Come here, sweetie," she whispered, pulling me close. We huddled in the bathroom and locked the door. Her fingers trembled as she dialed 911. "Someone's trying to get in," she murmured into the phone. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would drown out her voice. The banging grew worse, now the front door splintering under repeated blows. The man shouted, furious. My dad yelled back, "What do you want?" A gunshot cracked the air. I gasped, clinging to my mom. She hugged me tighter. "It's okay, Jamie. Stay quiet." But it wasn't okay. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. They were inside. My mom pressed her finger to her lips, but I was trembling so hard I could barely breathe. The man went from room to room, doors creaking open, checking. When he reached ours, he rattled the handle. "Open up," he growled. Silence. Then he kicked the door. Hard. Over and over until it finally burst open. He stood there, a stranger, masked, gun in hand. My mom stepped in front of me. "Please don't hurt us. Take what you want and go." He said nothing, just pointed the gun. Then he pulled black tape from his pocket, binding my wrists so tightly I cried out, and then my ankles. "Mom," I whimpered. She tried to push him back, but he fired. My mom fell, blood pooling beneath her. He dragged me down the stairs, my bare feet smashing against each step. My dad lay near the door, unmoving. Outside, the trunk of his car yawned open. He shoved me inside, the cold metal pressing against me as the engine rumbled. Sirens wailed in the distance, fading as he sped away. My wrists burned, fear twisted into knots in my stomach, and I wondered if anyone would ever find me. Eventually, the car stopped. He pulled me out into a forest of darkness, trees looming like silent sentries, a single cabin hidden among them. "This is your new home," he said flatly, cutting the tape from my ankles but keeping my hands bound. Inside, the cabin smelled of mildew and neglect. He handed me oversized pajamas, which I wore because I had no choice. "Try to run, and bad things will happen," he warned. "No one will hear you out here." That first night, I lay on the bed he pointed to, wide awake, every creak of the cabin magnified in the dark. He slept in the same room, snoring lightly, and every shadow felt like it might leap at me. I thought of my parents, their smiles, their voices, now silenced by him. Tears soaked the pillow, but I stayed silent, afraid even of sound. Days blurred. Sometimes he left for errands, other times not at all. When he did leave, he pushed me under his bed, stacking boxes and weights around me. "Don't move," he warned. Hours crawled by as I squirmed in the darkness, desperate to pee, desperate to breathe. Outside, birds chirped, cars passed, and no one came. He made me help with chores, cooking meals under his watchful eye. "Chop these," he'd order, knife in hand, eyes cold and empty. Once I asked why he'd taken me. He paused, forked midair. "I saw you on the school bus one day. I knew I wanted you." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Holidays passed in silence. At Christmas he left, stacking boxes heavier than before. I lay under the bed, the wind rattling the trees outside, wondering if anyone knew I was alive. Every noise made me jump, creaking floorboards, animals in the woods, even the shadows themselves. He let me outside once or twice, but gripped my arm tight. "If anyone sees you, I'll kill them too," he whispered. I believed him. Fear grew slowly, like water filling a bottle. Every day I wondered if today would be the day he snapped, if I'd ever see my family again. Then, one January day, he left. "Under the bed," he said, stacking weights. His engine faded. My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but a spark of hope. I pushed the boxes inch by inch, sweat beading my forehead. Pain burned in my arms, but finally a gap. I slipped out, trembling, heart pounding, legs wobbling. The cabin was empty. I grabbed his sneakers by the door and ran into the cold night, the woods clawing at my skin. Branches tore at my face, leaves slick beneath my feet. I stumbled onto a road. A woman walking her dog froze, eyes wide. "Are you James?" she asked. I nodded, tears streaming. "He took me. Please help." She wrapped me in her coat, led me to her neighbor's house, and called the police. I whispered Jake's name, told them about my parents. Minutes later, sirens, flashing lights. He was caught nearby, driving, silent, admitting it all. Now I live with my aunt. Loud noises still make me jump, but I'm stronger. That cabin tried to break me. but I survived. The memories replay in dreams, but I know one truth. Even in the darkest places, help can find you. We lived in a small wooden house out in the countryside near Okarch, Oklahoma. It stood alone on a wide stretch of land, surrounded by fields that rippled in the wind, with no neighbors close enough to hear a thing. My dad was the town's pastor, kind, patient, always helping people. My mom ran the house, taking care of me and my older brother Brooks, who was 16. Life was simple, steady. School, chores, family dinners, normal, safe, predictable. That evening, October 15th, 1979, started just like any other. Mom made fried chicken and mashed potatoes, the aroma filling the kitchen and drifting into the living room. We gathered at the table, laughing and talking about school. Dad asked Brooks, "How was football practice today?" Brooks smiled, pride in his voice. "Good. Coach says I'm getting faster." I nudged my plate. "I drew something in art class today. Want to see it?" Mom smiled. After dinner, sweetie, the clatter of silverware and the warmth of the lamp above us made everything feel ordinary, safe. Then came a knock at the door. Hard, sharp. My stomach sank. Dad got up, his brow furrowed, and peered through the window. Two men stood there, one tall, dark-haired, the other shorter with a scruffy beard. The tall one held a shotgun, the short one had a pistol. "This is a robbery," the tall man barked, shoving the door open. "Everyone on the floor, face down." Dad raised his hands, calm but tense. "Please, take what you want, but don't hurt my family." "Shut up and do what we say," the short one snapped, pressing the pistol against his side. We scrambled onto the living room rug. The tall one produced rope and bound our hands and feet, cold efficiency in his movements. "Where's the money?" he demanded. Dad pointed to a kitchen drawer. The short one rifled through it, returning with a handful of bills. "That's all?" the tall man sneered. "You're lying." Mom whispered, voice trembling. "That's everything, I promise." The men tore through the house, overturning drawers and cabinets, throwing belongings across the floor. Fear settled over me like a thick blanket. Then the tall man's eyes locked on mine. "You, come with me," he said. He yanked me up roughly, and I looked to Dad, panic-stricken. "No, please, leave her alone." The short one leveled the pistol at him. "Quiet, or I'll shoot now." He dragged me to the back bedroom. I don't want to recount everything that happened there. It was dark, brutal. I cried quietly, wishing desperately that Mom and Dad were safe. When it was over, he tied my feet again and returned me to the living room. The men sat at our table, eating the leftover chicken as if nothing had happened. "This is good," the short one said, crunching a drumstick. The tall one laughed. "Better than jail food." Their conversation turned to leaving town, their voices tense. "We can't leave witnesses," the tall one whispered. "Do it then," the short one replied. I froze as the tall one raised the pistol. "Sorry about this," he said, cold and emotionless. Bang! Dad fell, a crimson splash on the floor. Mom screamed, "Richard!" Bang! She crumpled next. Brooks groaned, shot twice in the back. I felt searing pain, 2 gunshots ripping through me. I lay still, blood in my mouth, wishing the world would just stop. Then silence. Brooks whispered hoarsely, "Leslie, you okay?" I whispered back, "It hurts." Dad managed a faint, "Kids, love you," before going still. Somehow, through sheer will, Brooks wriggled his hands free, using his teeth to loosen the ropes. He untied me. "We have to get help," he said. We crawled to Dad, whispered our love one last time. Staggering to our feet, bloodied and trembling, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen to cut the final ropes. Brooks got behind the wheel of our car, ignoring the pain in his own body. "Hold on, Leslie," he said, gripping the wheel tight. We drove through the night to a friend's house. The door swung open, their eyes wide in shock. "Call the ambulance!" Someone shouted. At the hospital, doctors worked to save us. Police arrived, asking questions. I described the men, the tall one with dark hair, the short one with a beard. Brooks mentioned the yellow car outside. "Chevy Malibu," he said. The men were caught quickly. Witnesses had seen that car at another robbery. Their trail led to an oil field where they worked. Their names, Glenn Ake and Stephen Hatch. They had fled, committing more crimes in Texas and Colorado, killing 2 more people. In Colorado, a hostage tricked them into drinking spiked beer, escaped, and called the police. 6 weeks later, the men were finally apprehended. They confessed. Glenn admitted to the shootings. Stephen aided him. Both had been drunk and on drugs. Sentences shifted over the years. Glenn eventually died in prison in 2011. Stephen as well, after his sentence was changed. Brooks and I grew up. He became a lawyer, eventually a senator, working to protect victims, and even confronting Glenn in prison years later, finding forgiveness to heal himself. I became a teacher, built a family, and kept going. We never forgot. That night taught me that evil exists, and so does the strength to survive it. Our home once felt safe.